It's a new year and it's a new me, and I wanted to make a video talking about all of the things that I watched, played, and read in a month. Personally, I don't want to make a dedicated video for every single thing that I have experienced, so this format is pretty much perfect for me. I guess I should also mention that I am just copying Karsten Runquist and Rasputin, who also copied from him, but instead of just focusing on movies or video games, I decided to just say screw it and do them all, including books, because why not? Go check them both out if you haven't already, they're great at what they're doing. But yeah, let's kick the series and the month of January off with Challengers. So this is my first Luca Guadagnino movie, and it was definitely an experience. I've been meaning to check his work for a long time, but for some reason I never did, until of course Challengers. It's a story centered around 3 tennis players, and the movie explores their relationship over the course of several years, going back and forth from the present to the past. And I really love this film. A lot. The 3 main performances were electrifying to say the least. You feel the chemistry between all of them. There's a bunch of ridiculously cool moments, some incredibly well put together shots and sequences. There's plenty of times when they're doing a shot reverse shot that feels so much like a tennis match as the characters and the camera are just being tossed and cut around back and forth. It's all just a lot of fun and definitely one of my favorites of last year. Following Challengers, I watched No Other Land. This is a documentary centered around the ongoing displacement of Palestinians in the region of Masaferyata by Israeli forces, and it is as hard to watch and as devastating as you might expect. The film primarily follows a Palestinian activist and a Jewish Israeli journalist spanning multiple years within this specific region, and with every passing moment, we see this place slowly be destroyed. One by one, families start losing their homes, loved ones get arrested or killed, and it's all just eye-opening in my opinion. I admit I rarely watch documentaries, but No Other Land is an example of why documentaries exist. It gives you an emotional attachment that fictional stories could never give, and this was no exception to that. You can obviously read about all of this stuff online, but watching it through the lens of the people living there, seeing and feeling just how dangerous it actually is to capture all of this footage, it is a lot more provocative. Definitely amongst my favorites of 2024, but it is almost frustrating to know that the film is not being released on a wider scale. After No Other Land, I watched Black Dog. This is a Chinese film about a man who befriended a stray dog that he was supposed to capture, and yeah, it's pretty good. The film feels organically real, and what I mean is that through the lack of music or any dramatized conflict, it feels like I'm just watching the life of a man along with the developments of the city he resides in, because the city itself is just as much of a character as the people living in it. Everything feels abandoned, it feels cold and bleak. Stray animals are roaming the streets, and it's all just slowly decaying. Similarly, our protagonist starts off rather aimlessly. He's just trying to live like everyone else. There's never really a sense of urgency until, of course, he meets a black dog and slowly starts to care for it. I do like the relationship between our protagonist and his canine best friend, I really do. I find it to be endearing, though I do wish that I felt more emotion for them and the movie in general. Still, I thought this was a decent time. And then I watched A Real Pain. I really love this film, surprisingly, even. I think this is not only one of the best of the year, but it's also one of the most endearing and relatable. The film follows 2 cousins, played by Jesse Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin, as they tour around Poland, with their final destination being their late grandmother's home. The entire movie just feels so sincere to me. It's both heartfelt and painful, it's hilarious at times, but it also doesn't shy away from introducing topics that can be a little sensitive. I think people can easily relate to either or even both of our main characters and how they each cope with their own fragility. It was also surprising to me that this movie was also directed by Jesse Eisenberg. He's definitely proven himself amongst the better ones in the field of actors turned directors, since this movie is nothing short of incredible. I really loved A Real Pain, go watch it if you can, I highly recommend it. And then I watched All We Imagine as Light, and it pains me to say that I wish I liked it more than I did. The film is set in India and follows the life of two nurses as they both try to face their own set of problems, and I guess similarly to Black Dog before, the film is very grounded in its approach. Very minimal use of music, heavy in dialogue that felt more real than dramatized, and while I do think there is heart and soul on display, most of it just never clicked for me. Maybe I went into the film with the wrong mindset, but yeah, story-wise, it didn't necessarily grab my full attention. Having said that, I do recognize that there is beauty in this film. There is sincerity in its direction and cinematography, and a couple of moments I find very intimate and beautiful. I just wish it left a longer and stronger impression on me. And for my first actual 2025 film, I watched Companion. Alright, so the thing about this movie is that the trailer pretty much spoiled a plot point that was obviously meant to be a surprise when you watch the movie. So as someone who has seen the trailer, I think you should watch this movie completely blind. Don't even look at the poster too much. I don't know. All I'll say about Companion is that I liked it. I think it was a pretty fun time. It has a bit of a dark humor in it. I like that aspect personally, though obviously comedy is subjective, of course. I really love Jack Quaid and especially Sophie Thatcher's performance. I've never seen her in anything before this, so she was great here. Absolutely a scene stealer. That's all I'll say about this movie. Go watch it blind. Moving on to the serialized world of television, I started the month by finally watching Shogun. I've only seen the first 5 episodes, but so far this has been a blast. I can't really say anything negative about the show because it has just been getting better and better with each and every episode. The story has been both engaging and interesting to digest, with characters that you can't help but root or despise. I know this is based on a famous novel that's also loosely based on actual history, but I can't say that I am familiar with the source material. But that makes my viewing experience a lot more suspenseful because at this point I'm still unsure where we're going, and that's a good thing. There are plans within plans when it comes to each of our characters' ambitions, political machinations resulting in unlikely alliances and sacrifices, but behind it all there is a compelling drama that I think is worth experiencing. I'll talk more about Shogun once I finish it, but so far halfway through the series, it's already a banger. Another show that I started in January was Delicious in Dungeon. So I saw the first 3 episodes about a year ago when the show first aired, but time got in the way and I never continued it. Now that the show is over and a second season announced, I jumped back in and it has been quite a blast. I'm only 9 episodes in so far, but the show has been pretty surprising. If you don't know what this is, Delicious in Dungeon basically follows a group of adventurers down a massive dungeon with its own ecosystem to rescue a party member left behind, and how they will survive their journey is by, of course, eating the monsters they defeat. It is such a fun and wacky premise. I was worried that the whole premise of fighting seemingly inedible creatures to then finding a way to eat them may run its course and become stale, but what the show has managed to balance is the methodically slow addition of world building surrounding the dungeon in question. The deeper we go, the less we know, and the more mysterious it gets, the more intriguing it becomes. Much like Shogun, I'll talk more about this as I progress further into the series, but so far, it has been a nice comfort watch, though I'm not so sure how much comfort it'll be once we delve deeper into the dungeon. I also rewatched Arcane Season 2 for like the 4th or 5th time now. I lost count. Watching Arcane as a non-league player has been great, and I think Season 2 was phenomenal. Flawed in certain areas, but phenomenal nonetheless. Is it better than Season 1? I don't know. I can't quite answer that. Each season, I think, has a different approach, and while I understand why some who long for the groundedness of Season 1 might be disappointed with 2, I personally love how the season explores a lot of its heroic fantasy elements while still providing enough of an emotional punch. For better or for worse, Season 2 is ambitious. I think it's a tour de force in animation, an achievement that pushes the medium from a technical standpoint and really sets the standard higher than the first season did. And for the most part, I still love the characters with all of their developments and relationships. The world building and lore establishment this season was a lot of fun. fun to follow through, and personally, I think they stuck the landing when it comes to the saga of the series. I cannot wait for the next chapter, whenever that will be. Besides Arcane, I am also rewatching Dark. This is my first rewatch of the show since finishing it back in late 2023, and going through all of season 1 this month has been a fun rewatch experience. The show, without spoiling much, deals a lot with the concept of time and space, and with it comes what I think is one of the best examples in how to do foreshadowing. It begs the audience to follow along and solve the mystery with the characters, and it will either feel rewarding when you got it right, or feel shocking when you got it wrong. It's actually incredible how they set everything up, because either way, you will be rewarded. I don't know how else to recommend this show, but Dark remains one of my favorite modern shows ever. It's incredibly rich with its themes and characters, some of the best use of editing I've seen for a television series, at least in terms of intentional cuts and shots that literally screams to the audience an answer they don't even know the question for yet. It is awesome. Another show that I started to rewatch this month was Neon Genesis Evangelion. This is my 8th rewatch of the show, and if you think that's crazy, then you are absolutely right, because instead of watching new anime shows, I just rewatch my favorites. Look, Evangelion holds a special place in my heart. It's not just one of my favorites, but it's also one of the most influential to me. The story of Evangelion, for those who don't know, follows a young boy named Shinji who's being forced to pilot giant humanoid mechs called Evangelions under the orders of his unloving father against beings called angels. What started as a Monster of the Week story slowly transforms into something much more psychological and personal. The show dives deep into each of our characters' psyche and pretty much breaks them apart. I'm only 6 episodes into my rewatch, but even in the show's first couple of episodes, the direction by show creator Hideki Anno is just unparalleled. He masterfully cuts transitions and holds a shot in a way that is so artistically deliberate that it is just insane to think about how there really isn't any other anime like it. The show is influential to the anime medium for a reason. The direction is impeccable, the score can be hauntingly beautiful, and the characters are both likable and hateable, and that's what makes them special. And then I watched Cobra Kai, specifically season 5. So I started watching Cobra Kai late last year, immediately after I watched the Karate Kid trilogy for the first time as well. And it is shocking to me in how much I love this show. The show is campy in many ways. It can get to a ridiculous point in how crazy and over the top some of the storylines can get, and yet it's all so charming and fun to watch. A friend of mine described Cobra Kai as basically live-action anime, and I could not agree more. I do think for some this aspect may be a turnoff, like if you're expecting something that is as serious as Breaking Bad, then you might be disappointed. But if you love the Karate Kid trilogy and you're expecting that but expanded into a series, then you're gonna be hyped for every season. And season 5 was so good. I can't wait to talk more about Cobra Kai since the final season will end in February, so I'll see you then. Throughout the month of January, I've been non-stop playing Balatro, a game that at this point needs no introduction. If you don't know what this game is, basically you have a deck of cards and you play various different poker hands to score points. And if you surpass the required number, you move on to the next round, where the points required gets higher and higher. What keeps the gameplay loop going are Joker cards. They're cards with unique special abilities to help you gain more points by either adding or multiplying them. I think what's so engaging about Balatro is how the game is essentially forcing you to adapt with what kind of Joker cards you have, because the game is also a roguelite. Jokers and other special cards appear randomly, and you choose whether a card is worth buying even if it's just for a short-term gain, or is it wiser to skip and play another round to accumulate more money and wait for a better, more expensive card. There's tons of scenarios where I have to make a call and it either backfired on me or got me to win the game. And the feeling when you got the perfect Joker combinations and you watch as the numbers go up and up and up is just oh so satisfying. Balatro got nominated for multiple awards for a reason. I think it's a fun indie game worth checking out, and I feel like I need to emphasize this for those still unaware, but this isn't real gambling. There's no real money involved except for your first time purchase of the game, because otherwise that would be I don't even know what number that's supposed to be. From playing Joker cards, I decided to play Gwent cards in the best card game of all time, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Jokes aside, I've been meaning to replay The Witcher 3 for quite a while, and the official announcement of The Witcher 4 was definitely the push that I needed. For this replay, I am using a couple of mods, though nothing as big as overhauls, just minor stuff to change some of the visuals and such, but yeah, this has remained one of my favorite games ever. Playing as Geralt and roaming around the world feels immersive. The cities and villages feel lived in and bursting with side quests that are all well written and executed, and I'm taking my time on this playthrough. I want to be as immersed as I can be, trying not to rush the plot forward, even though the urgency to do so is absolutely there. Like, Ciri is in trouble, evil world-hopping space elves are chasing her all the time, and I'm just out here chilling and collecting Gwent cards. That's just how most RPGs are kind of designed, but the difference here is that the side content is strong enough to pull me away from the main quest, and I consider that to be a positive. Currently speaking, I just finished what I consider the first half of the Bloody Baron questline, and again, I am reminded by just how engrossing the game's narrative really is. It strongly presents the nature and the theme of the series in general, in that evil is evil and it comes in various forms. The question is, how will you confront this evil? By playing more Gwent, of course. I'll talk more about my experience of playing the game another time. But a game that I did start for the first time this month was Kingdom Come Deliverance. I was intimidated at first, part of the reason why I held back for many years now, because this game is not only massive in scale, but one of its key selling points is that it leans heavily on being realistic. You have to eat, drink, sleep, take a bath. Everything feels tactile, and one could argue that it's tedious and cumbersome, but that's the point of the game. You are role-playing in a medieval era, based and inspired by actual places and events in history. It is devoid of any fantasy elements. It's not meant to feel arcadey. It is ambitiously realistic in its approach to game design. To be honest, it took a while for me to be fully on board with the game. I enjoyed my first couple of hours, but it never clicked for me until later when I got my horse for the first time. Now that I could travel the world more conveniently, it felt like the game finally opened up to me, and I finally felt that role-playing freedom. Because in the game, you can choose to handle various types of situations differently. For example, you can either peacefully try to talk to a person or choose violence to get it done quickly, and not only that, but your physical appearances will also have an effect on dialogue options. Like, people will treat you differently if you're dirty or have bloodstains on your clothes. Traveling the open world also gives you a plethora of unique encounters that you can choose to confront or ignore that could result in some really fun or hilarious moments. This one time I was trotting through the forest where I got ambushed and killed because I was outnumbered and unprepared. I reloaded the game and decided to go on a different route, only to encounter a body laying on the road. Hearing a person running behind me, I quickly turned back and hit him, thinking that it is an ambush, but when they immediately ran away, I realized my mistake and I probably just hit a random NPC by accident because I was being too cautious. I kept wondering if that guy was tied to the body I found, like maybe that was his friend or whatever, but I guess I'll never know, and at this point I'd rather not know. I'll talk more about the story and characters once I progress further into the game, but so far I think that aspect of the game is just fine. But I do think that the game's biggest strength is in its level of immersion. Walking through a city during the day or at night feels so atmospheric, and if it wasn't for the fact that the game is practically in survivor mode, then I would have absolutely spent all day just running around the world. I'll talk more about the game after I finish it, which at this rate will probably take some time. Roaming around a medieval kingdom got my nostalgia kicking in to boot up Medieval 2 Total War. Many years ago, I got into gaming through the strategy genre, and the Total War series was the one that really got me addicted to video games. If you don't know about the series, basically a campaign consists of two elements. The first is the world map where you control your empire in turn-based fashion. You build your cities, recruit units, initiate diplomacies, send spies and other agents to your enemies, that sort of stuff. When your army is under attack, we switch to the second aspect of the game, and that is the real-time battle map, where you control your individual units and attack your opponents in a large-scale battle. What's so great about Medieval 2, especially now that I am revisiting it, is just how fleshed out a lot of these mechanics are. For a game that is almost 2 decades old, it still holds up surprisingly well today. Like, sometimes when you go back to an older title of a game, you feel the jankiness of its era when compared to the more polished versions released today, but Medieval 2 feels so ahead of its time upon reflection. The only major flaw in my opinion is that the battle camera doesn't offer the 360 freedom that modern titles do, but that is easily fixable by using a mod, which is exactly what I did. Honestly, replaying Medieval 2 makes me really sad that Creative Assembly never made a Medieval 3, but that's just a sentiment that the entire Total War community kinda shares, and we are all huffing copium in that a Medieval 3 is happening soon. It's not though, it's probably gonna be like Star Wars or something. And finally, I ended the month by reading Solanin. This is my second Inio Asano manga, the first being Goodnight Punpun, and yeah, it's pretty good. Similar to Goodnight Punpun, Solanin takes a serious and grounded approach to its storytelling, choosing to focus more on the sometimes mundanity of life and an attention to the ordinary. Since Solanin was released before Goodnight Punpun, it's interesting to find a lot of the foundations and formulae that would then be present in the latter. From how Asano uses paneling to the photographic realism of the background art, in many ways I see Solanin as a prelude to Goodnight Punpun. While I don't think it's as great or as gut-wrenching, it is still incredible in its own way. The story revolves around Meiko, who lives with her boyfriend Taneda, and we follow them along with their friends as they try to continue living their individual lives while finding time to create music. At its core, it's a story of ordinary people living ordinary lives, and it perfectly captures this feeling or desire of wanting more. There's drama in the story obviously, but it never felt like it's too much drama. A lot of it feels mature, despite how a lot of times our characters act immaturely. Which is to say that it all felt human to me. It's all about living in the moment, and sometimes that means you just want to stay inside your room. Sometimes it means you just want to step out of your comfort zone. The manga portrays these very real human actions so sincerely that by the end, I just sat in front of my screen for a good long while. The manga got to me by the end, it really did, but not in like a sad way, but in a more hopeful, good feeling kind of way. That's everything I watched, played, and read in the month of January. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care everyone and have a nice day.